You're welcome back to Business Morning. And now let's move on to our second conversation for today. We're talking about how reading opened the mind of billionaires to worlds beyond their environment. Around the world, some of today's most influential billionaires say their rise to success didn't just start with money or power, but with books, the reading culture, and that they argue that this is what gave them access to worlds far beyond their immediate environment, shaping their vision, discipline, and even innovation. From Bill Gates to Elon Musk, Warren Buffett to Oprah Winfrey, Dangote, Otedola, etc. Many of the world's wealthiest attributed their breakthroughs not only to hard work, but to knowledge gained through voracious reading. Microsoft founder Bill Gates has described himself as a reader who never stopped asking questions, crediting books with expanding his curiosity about science, history, and global health. And even Elon Musk famously said he learned how to build rockets by reading. Even Oprah Winfrey has long championed books as a way to empower, uplift, and even imagine new possibilities. Experts say reading exposes individuals to diverse perspectives, cultures, problem-solving strategies, qualities essential in building billion-dollar enterprises. Beyond wealth creation, it also instills empathy and foresight, bridging gaps between personal ambition and global impact. So could the secret to building billion-dollar ideas lie not in boardrooms, but in the pages of a book? Well, now joining us on the reading culture importance is veteran Richard Mamah. He is the president, Network of Book Clubs and Reading Culture Promoters in Nigeria. He's a former secretary, Association of Nigerian Authors in Lagos, and also the consulting editor, Business Hallmark newspaper. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So good to have you join us to, give us more insight on the reading culture. Now, very quickly, many of today's wealthiest individuals credit books for shaping their vision. Can you recall a particular book that shifted your your worldview and even influenced your business decisions?
Well, thank you very much. Let me appreciate the opportunity of coming on your show and on your program this morning. Thank you for the work you are doing.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think it's a notable point that books are important to the development of people, and it also, comes to the fore when you talk about people who are influential, people who are notable, people who are wealthy. Yes, the books have an impact on them. Thinking through a single book that has made that much impact, I would say that it's a tough one, because the thing about the reading culture is that it's a culture, which means that it's something that you continue to build. So you read a book today, you read another one tomorrow, you read another. It's like, a skyscraper. So each book builds on the nest. Each book builds on the nest. But, if I'm going to pick a book that is significant, that is impactful, that is almost complete, that has messages, that has helplines, and that has guide notes to helping to build and shape individual prosperity, as well as social and communal well-being. It's really a tough one, but I don't find a book that beats, for me as a Christian, the Bible. I don't find a book that beats it, because, just reflecting over it, you find, quite a lot of insights, on wisdom, on, well-being, on building proper structures, proper systems. It's quite a full one. But if we go out of that plane, I think I have read a number of notable biographies and autobiographies that do have left me with quite a lot of insights into the minds and into the growth processes and into, even the breakthroughs for the subjects, or the authors in that sense. You mentioned a number of notable personalities that have built their careers, built their prosperity, built their wealth base. I think every one of them, in itself, has been quite remarkable. But one of the books I read about 3 decades ago that leaves me with a lot of memory is Richard Branson's autobiography. Now he wrote this book, and he actually did talk about his story. And very remarkably for me, Branson had what the behavioral scientists would call dyslexia, and that is supposed to be a retarding factor for knowledge, for growth acquisition. And at the time he was growing up, the science had not developed to that point, so people did not understand exactly what his peculiar makeup at that point and his disadvantage was. So he was, to use a local word, he was being branded as an Olodo. You don't know anything. But the truth about it is that this man was growing in his own way. Ultimately, his principal, different people, made very disparaging remarks about his, capacities and possibilities for the future. But he just kept building on, and it was able to get the connections and build his base. He also talked about quite a number of notable things that I think people need to know, and that is why reading biographies are important. So he struggled with dyslexia. The next thing he struggled with was when he went, into high school, he had to deal with his peers, who also were looking at him as, what was this one all about? But he was able to make the point, and ultimately, while he was still in school, he began publishing a school journal that became a public journal. Wow. It became like a magazine publisher, in that sense. So taking disadvantage into advantage. And then, eventually he got into
that's very inspiring, sir.
And all of those systems. So that's how it works. Thank you.
So now reading often introduces us to perspectives beyond our immediate environment. How did books expand your imagination in ways your early surroundings could not?
Thank you very much. You are spot on. Reading expands our possibilities. When you read a book, you go into the world of the book, right? And if the book is set in Australia, you have an idea of, what Australia is, the weather, the fauna, the atmosphere there is not exactly the same as our Harmattan, and rainy season that we have here. So when you read a book, the setting, the nuances that are communicated there tells you a lot about it. So growing up, small community in Delta, you start reading books like Chike and the River, and it starts telling you about the River Niger and about Onitsha and about, related, environments. That starts telling you about, the trading cultures of that area. You read books, like Cyprian Quincy's titles, and it continues to expand your worldview. You read Charles Dickens, and you begin to have an idea of how England, used to be before now, how they struggled, with poverty, how they struggled with child labor and all of those things, So it busts the bubble. When someone tells you, oh, you go abroad and there's gold on the streets, Charles Dickens says, no, when I was growing up and the England that I know, it was not like that. It was people that built this society, in that sense. So reading, helps you to open out, perspectives, to see broader dimensions than ordinarily you would not get, just walking around your space or interacting with people in your own environment. It's a passport, that says, look, every country in the world, 192 or more, you can go. All the 55 countries in Africa, you can visit. from the comfort of your book, in that sense. You have an idea of South Africa. You read about Steve Biko, and you know about how they built up. You read Nelson Mandela. You read, as Zambia Shall Be Free, Kenneth Kaunda. So you have an idea of how the entire, independence movement was building up, how nations were being shaped. So there's nothing that beats reading, in terms of building a total person, a very exposed person, someone who is capable and confident, to face his world. And I think that's what education is. But beyond just getting the certificates from the traditional curriculum program, it is important to have it as a culture item. That is, you would be reading and reading and reading and appreciating that even when you go out of the school, you would have to continue reading. Because for a number of the great people you find, it is not what they read 20 years ago that is building their bank vaults. It is what they continue to read.
Wow. Now, this is very educating. Just talking to you and hearing you analyze these facts, it takes me down memory lane when I was actually into novels. I actually find myself in those environments. Now, very quickly, in an age dominated by digital media, do you believe the discipline of reading physical books still offers unique advantages for leaders and innovators?
Very, very well. I think I thank God for digital media. Digital media is has expanded the frontiers, in ways that could not have been imagined, in decades before now. It has, and it continues to do that. But good old hard copy physical books still have their place. The truth about it is that we're in a world that is uneven. Now we're having this interview, virtually, thanks to, digital media. If it was the season before now, we would have had to do physical trips, in that sense.
Sure.
But, despite the advances that digital media has brought, there are also very solid advances that we need to retain from where we are coming, which is the hard copy book. And, when people talk about the distance and the difference between printed books and digital books, they try to make it as if it's a gulf. It's not exactly a gulf, because if you check the history of the book, you will find out that once upon a time we communicated just orally. There was no writing, and then we moved on to writing systems, and then we moved on to documentation systems. For example, if you take the Bible, it was written on scrolls. It was written on scrolls. Some of it was narrated, to the authors who now scripted it out before they now put it together into one compendium, a few centuries back. So it's important for us to know that we have come on this journey, and we are still going on the journey. Humanity would continue to grow as long as we remain on the face of this, planet, in that sense.
Okay.
But so digital media would continue to play its role. But if you go to communities, for example, that we call rural communities, suburban communities, where they don't have good enough access in terms of digital connectivity, in terms of electricity supplies, and even in terms of, even when you find the access, you've got to also check what the costs, implications are. So you find out that for you to sustain a reading culture on digital media may cost you something like, let's say 5,000 to 20,000 naira, in a given month. Now there are people who don't earn that. So are you going to take them off? No. But if you have a good reading room in that community where you have physical books, they will benefit, from the fact that they are still in the world of books, even when they don't have as much of the digital presence that they would want to, So it's an important point that has to be considered. Nigeria is a country with reportedly a few years ago 133 million people being multidimensionally poor. Now those people may not be able to afford a lot of the Androids and all of the systems that make digital connectivity just the norm. in that sense. So we need
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
ensure that they continue to tap the diet.
Exactly,
Thank you.
sir. Now, some argue that billionaires actually succeed because of resources and networks, not just knowledge. But then, how would you respond to the idea that reading alone is not enough?
Yeah, no, you do have a point. Reading alone is not enough. I would agree with that at every point in time. It's not enough, but it's a major, major, major step in the entire process. Because if you have the networks and you don't have a good reading base, you would even have issues with processing.
Okay.
I know a certain billionaire in Nigeria, for example. Okay, something between millionaire and billionaire. I don't have his bank balance in my hand, but I know this elderly gentleman,
Okay.
right? And I know that he's been involved in business. I interviewed him a couple of years back, and he was talking about some of the steps he had taken and some of the steps he had not taken. And you could see that part of the issues that he had that stopped him from growing further had to do with the fact that his reading culture was challenged. He literally pulled himself up into, a solid business. But when it came to taking decisions to moving the business further, his background, the limitations of exposure that he had from his background kept being a drag. He set up a bank. The bank has since been acquired by some other bank. He set up several other businesses. But, as technology changes, as market trends change, if you are not adept at catching it, you could very well find out that just like the dinosaurs, your business could go extinct or go under.
Okay.
So it's actually a challenge if you don't have a good reading base.
Exactly.
And that is why, for example, even in Nigeria, literally every year, there are several high net worth business and political players who have on their schedule every year to go to school. Whether it is Harvard Business School or Yale, or somewhere in Dubai or somewhere, take almost 2 weeks to 1 month every year to go to school. I could call names for you, and they are some of the major players, some of the major drivers of the Nigerian and African economy. They go to school every year to study some more, to interface some more. And if you also go in their cars, and as they travel, I think former Governor Fashoya is a remarkable example. They don't travel without carrying 1 or 2 books, along with them. So that tells you that even when there are networks, even when there are resources, they appreciate, the value of continuing to top up, their reading capacities and strengths.
Okay, so now if you had to recommend 3 books to young entrepreneurs who feel limited by their environment, which will they be and why?
All right. Now this is also tough because there are thousands and millions of books out there, and if I would take the line from Chinua Achebe, he said that there are good books, there are bad books, but the answer to a bad book is a good one. So people should just continue writing books.
Okay.
Now, I will say to that entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur that, look, the first thing I would say to you is, what do you want to read? That is, what are your natural interests? Because you have a wide gamut of books. Okay, now, if, for example, you are into technology, in your diet would be your technology books because it's your professional area, right? So that would be there. There will be some professional books, right, in your diet. But also, there's one winner that I think scores at any time, which is the stories of forebears before you who have done well in your area or in the area you are aspiring to build on. For example, Femi Otedola just published a book, Making It Big, right? Now, if you are an entrepreneur and you are trying to get into business on the same scale or about the same frame as Mr. Otedola, for example, now it would be a good idea to read his book. not because it would have all the answers to what you need,
Exactly.
but because you could pick a number of nuances or nuggets from it. Or you could even pick a number of things that you disagree with. Because reading a book does not say that you are converted into the choir. It says you have the knowledge base of the author or of the authors or of the subject to add to your considerations.
True.
So you could take making it big. If you are into politics or interested in power dynamics, as it were, you could be looking at something like Ibrahim Babangida's book that was published earlier in the year and presented. So that itself could give you an idea. So it's not a one size fits all consideration. It is about your interest, because one of the things that discourages people from reading some of the time is when they read a book that does not align with their interests. Okay. Right? That does not align with their interest. So they don't have a whole lot of primal motivation, for it. Of course, we encourage people to read widely, but start specifically with things that are within your passion range. Okay. So in a broad sense, motivational books are good, right? If you can, if you are that minded, or if you just want, some general nuggets. And there's quite a lot of motivational books, out there. Kiyosaki, quite a lot of them all over the place. So motivational books are good. Oh, biographies for me are great. Biographies, and particularly autobiographies. Okay. They are great. Oh, and of course, professional books in your own subject area. So that, I think I could just drop it at that.
We want to really appreciate you, sir, because you've been wonderful. You've actually opened the minds of a lot of people watching, and even myself. I can go on and on of things that I just learned just hearing you talk about this reading culture. Thank you so much for your time. We truly, truly appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. So we've been graced by the presence of veteran Richard Mamah. He is the president, network of book clubs and reading culture promoters in Nigeria, and the consulting editor, Business Hallmark newspaper. And now that's it for Business Money today. Thank you for staying with us as we track the latest trends shaping markets and the economy. Remember, business decisions are stronger when backed by the right information. I am Destiny Momoh. Do stay tuned for more updates on Big Story, and join us again tomorrow for yet another edition of Business Morning on The Breakfast Show. Thank you and good morning.